Hello students, in this video I would like to explain the MC questions in lesson quiz 4, which some of you claims that they are quite difficult or challenging. Okay, so I will take a video to explain all the questions with you. So if you find that some of the questions actually you do know how to complete that, so you may skip to the questions that you want to know the full solutions. Okay, let's start. So for question 1, which of the following equation is not? Okay, is not. Basically, so you can retrieve a quadratic equation for the choice A. For the choice B, of course, it is a factorized form already. For choice C, of course, clearly, without doing expansion, you know that it can be retrieved as a quadratic equation. So the answer is choice D, which is clearly a linear equation. So for question 2, so basically it is a substitution. So since this is a MC question, I am not going to do the put x equals negative 3 over 2 into 2x squared， 我就唔寫嗰行啦。Basically you plug in and calculate the value, and then you get b equals to negative 5. This is not the end of the story. Okay, if you choose A, then this is wrong because the question is asking about the another root. Okay, the another root. So you consider this equation and you try to factorize it out, and you should realize D is the answer. Okay. Question 3. Again, given that A is a root, whenever you see that it is a root, it means that you can do the substitution. It means that this is always true. Okay, this is always true due to the fact that A is a root of this equation. Our target is only the 2a squared plus 4a part, which makes our answer to be negative 3 by throwing the positive 3 to the right hand side. Okay, this is our target, and this statement is always true, and therefore when we throw the 3 to the right hand side, this is the answer. So the answer is C. Oops. Okay, question 4. Actually, you do not need to do the expansion. Okay, so this question is actually similar to what we have learned previously. This is already a complete square form, and you can take square root and make x as the subject. This is the idea, and therefore this is already a perfect square form. You can take square root on both sides, and remember the positive case or the negative case. Therefore x equals 2k plus k, or x equals to negative 2k plus k. Therefore the choice should be C. Okay, question 5 is a little bit tricky as well. This time, it is not a perfect square on left hand side. It is not a perfect square on right hand side either. So what you have to do is replace every terms on the left hand side, and we retrieve the form of a general quadratic equation to be equal to 0 first. Now we take out the common factor, which is 4kx. What remains for the bracket part will be x minus 4k. Okay, so we have the product of something and another thing equals to 0, which suggests the following facts. according to the principle of factor method when we solve a quadratic equation. And now we get the answer D. Question 6. Which of the following equations has roots a and negative b? Following our tradition of forming equation, it should be appearing like this. Of course, as you remember, as we discussed in the lesson, there should be a constant a here. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 3, negative 4, square root 2, pi. Any constant a will be fine for the quadratic equation. But here, generally, we place 1 unless specified we want one equation only. And you can realize that all of the choices here doesn't contain any numbers. So we basically refer to this case. Be careful, C and D is actually not correct. So what can we do? We carry out the expansion first. And you realize both choice A and B factorized out a variable x here, while the AB is on the right hand side. So what comes into your mind is throw the AB to the right hand side and factorize the common factor x out in order to get the answer A. Okay, question 7, follow our previous discussion. This is the answer with the equals 0, of course, and upon expansion you should get directly C as the final answer. Okay, let's move on to the next page, question 8. This is quite challenging because in your first glance you will do something like this and you realize you will fail by keeping track of this form. Okay, so you have to be flexible. You realize factorizing the left hand side and right hand side separately have nothing to do with the questions. So you have to be flexible in terms of let's try another way out. Again, traditionally for a quadratic equation, place everything on the left hand side first and equals 0 on the right hand side. Now, what do you feel when you look at this polynomial? You may pause my video and think before we move on. Okay, so here's the answer. Realize that this term is actually a cross term, negative 2ax. It must be grouped together with these two. So let's rearrange for a better observation, such that you realize this is a perfect square, followed by traditional factorization skills, and you will be able to get the answer A. Okay, now let's go to question 9. This is also a challenging question. We know that this is a root. This is the fact. This is the information that has been provided, and this is the corresponding equation. So one and only one thing that you can do is place x equals 1 over a into the given equation. This is something that you can do. And you realize upon simplification, C must be 0. Make sense? Okay? The question requires A not to be 0, but it doesn't require A to be non-zero. A cannot be 0 because it will vanish the term x squared and return this equation into a linear equation. It will no longer be a quadratic equation if A is 0. But C is 0, that's definitely fine. It is still a quadratic equation. And under the consideration that 1 over a is a root, we must have c equals 0. Okay, let's look at choice number 1. A is a root. We do not know whether this is true or not, so let's check the left hand side. Upon placing x equals a, we get 2a plus c equals 0. But c is 0. This is a fact that we have obtained. So a has to be negative c over 2 is basically 0, but this is nonsense. So the choice number 1 is wrong. How about choice number 2? C is the other root of this equation. Okay, so let's see. C, because we know that it is 0. Make sense? C is 0. This is a fact. So if we place C inside, and actually I should not write equals 0. Actually we are doing the checking. The left hand side equals c squared over a plus c plus c. But c is 0. It satisfies the right hand side condition. So because left hand side equals right hand side, and therefore statement 2 is correct. The answer is boy. Question 10. Now again, one of the important skills when we do quadratic equation is, if the right hand side is not equal to 0, place it as 0 first. Okay. Now it requires your observation. Again, you may pause my video and think about how can I proceed. Okay, here's the answer. 2 minus ax, ax minus 2. They appear really similar if we do a little check. Okay? Sorry, it should be 2 minus ax. Okay? A little check creates a common factor. And we now proceed by a traditional factor method. And express x as the subject. Now here, realize that a has to be larger than 1. A can be 1.5. A, of course, can be 100. But if a is 1.1, 1.2, 1.9, this value will still be larger than 1. While for the right hand side here, this root must be smaller than 1. However, statement 2 states that both roots, the first appearing root here, does not satisfy condition 2. How about condition 1? So use your mind, use your brain. Actually, they must be different. Can you understand why? Okay, I leave it as a blank for you to think of why these two roots must be different. Okay, so the answer is A. Okay, for question 11 and question 12, I think it is not that difficult, but I will still explain this. So we learned that in order to create something, so we have x squared minus kx. In order to create a perfect square, we add something. What is the rule? What is the thing that we need to add here in order to form it a perfect square? The rule is b squared over 4, right? This time, b is negative k. But don't worry, negative k being squared is still positive. So the answer is C. Okay, that's almost the end. And we arrive in question 12. So 4x squared minus kx plus 16 in x is a perfect square. So actually this is quite an observation problem, okay? Of course you can remember b squared equals 4ac. So b squared equals 4ac and k squared equals 256, and therefore the answer is C. But actually it is quite intuitive that you can realize x squared minus something x plus 4, and if you multiply 4, and in order for this to be a perfect square, this has to be a perfect square as well, and you can think backward. This is a perfect square, this is also a perfect square, given that the constant term is 4, the coefficient of x squared is 1, you must have the coefficient of x to be 4 or negative 4, right? And you multiply the whole bunch of things by 4 to obtain the answer 16 or negative 16. Okay, so if you have any other further questions, please come and ask me. Thank you for watching this video.